My name is John V. Welcome to Chautauqua People. My guest today is Chaz Kerschner. He's a native of West Reading, Pennsylvania, and currently lives in Chevy Chase, Maryland. He did his undergraduate work in math and physics at Albright College in Pennsylvania, and additional graduate work at the American University in Washington, D.C. Afterwards, he joined a national security agency based upon his technical skills, but eventually had a career in organizational relations, rising to the senior executive service rank before retiring from NSA. He's an accomplished fine arts photographer and has taught courses at Chautauqua both in photography and national security activities. He summers at the St. Elmo in Chautauqua and has been actively involved in committee work there. Chaz, tell me, what does NSA really stand for?
I mean, I shouldn't say never says anything.
Okay. No such agency?
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody knows the National Security Agency in this decade. Last decade, I would have had to explain that.
Okay. And tell me, it's been said that NSA is a microcosm of a high-tech industry. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. In fact, that's the thing that actually drew me into NSA was the vision of being able to be at the forefront of technology development when I was there.
Mm-hmm. And what are NSA's primary responsibilities within the government?
Well, they're the agency that provides the signals intelligence information for government and military officials to use for security purposes, and they also have a dual role as the providers of security and crypto gear for the U.S. military and the government.
Right. Now, as they've had this information basis, and politics have changed, have NSA's functions changed over the years?
I would say not at all, really.
Okay.
I mean, the titles have changed and organization names have changed, but the basic function of what they do has not changed.
Right. I've heard General Hayden say that at one point the big focus was on the Soviet Union and missile activities, and since 9/11 there has been somewhat of a adjusted focus, but still it's providing information primarily, is it not?
Sure. Yeah, the targets change, but the technology that you use to go after the targets and the way you analyze the information really hasn't changed.
Right. And technology rich, I guess, is the facility.
Amazingly.
And I make the joke and that some people get it and those who've never been in the building don't. And I've walked through there. I had a friend, as I told you, a friend who was an intern, and he gave me a tour. And we got down to the basement. In the academic world, you measure computing power in gigabytes. In NSA, it should be measured in acreage.
And
it's just
very
amazing.
true.
It's just amazing.
The first time I walked through there was just unbelievable, the equipment I saw, because I had come from a technology-poor college. You know, we had, I think, one analog computer.
Right.
And NSA, you know, had literally acres of them.
Mm-hmm. And indeed, my belief is, my friends have talked with me about this, in the appropriate environment. That stuff is used well, it's used aggressively, and every administration that's come in, as I understand it, probably giving more of myself in this than I should, every administration has come in and had their accountants look at it. Since World War II has said that function is a good one, it should be adequately resourced. And most of us who are Chautauquans would say, if we have a change of administration, they should go through and look and see what's spent well and what's not spent well. That looks out for taxpayers. Let me switch gears a little bit, and this is a tough one. Can you tell me how Edward Snowden's revelations have affected our national security from your perspective?
Well, like some of his predecessors who also revealed other secrets, I think he forced NSA to change some of their capabilities. So it cost the U.S. government a lot of money to replace compromised systems and what have you. I think it's brought the NSA to the attention of more of the public, and I think it's a pretty healthy debate that we're having right now, asking ourselves what the new definition of personal and national security is. So on the large, I think NSA is going to come out of this just fine.
Right, right. And they're competent people, and they have long, as we've discussed here already, long adjusted to changing requirements and changing times. And so they'll do that fine. Now, one of the things that we see has happened is that a good deal of the workflow that used to be performed a couple decades ago by career civilian employees, or it was done by military, and now it's done by contractors. What's your take on that?
Well, I was never a great fan of that when it started, and I'm still not great fan of it. And I think the Edward Snowden's a good example of some of the risks that you take when you hire private contractors to do that work. Those people are not as committed, I believe, to the mission of NSA.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that shows up in compromises in other areas.
In multiple areas. I thought I saw less attention to detail in my watch, and a few who may have been retired military or retired civil service seemed to have the fire necessary, but many of the young contractors didn't. I think you would agree.
It's another job.
That's it. Let's go to a little more cheery item. and NSA provided a good career for you, and to my perspective, some of the most important work in the country is done there. I wonder if you could tell us how you came to Chautauqua.
Well, I met my wife, Jane, and we started dating in, I guess it was 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And she started talking about Chautauqua and her family, who were long-timers here. Jane had been coming here since she was 14 years old. And she invited me to come along with her in 1990, and I came up for, I believe, 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall on the ride home, we had a discussion, and I mentioned, Jane, I don't know where this conversation is going to go, or where this relationship's going to go, but I'm always coming back to Chautauqua.
So you've been a regular.
I was captured from the get-go.
Regular since 1991.
That's right.
Absolutely. And do you have a family involvement in this? Brought others up?
Between us, we have 4 kids
Okay.
and 5 kids and 5 grandchildren.
Okay.
And all of them have been here at one point or another. I think now that we have grandchildren involved, suddenly the children become more interested in Chautauqua. And I think a lot of people that come to Chautauqua have that experience. Your kids kind of lose interest maybe in their teens, but
Right.
when they have their own kids, all of a sudden Chautauqua really has a big new attraction.
Right. Are there favorite activities for this next generation?
I think just riding their bikes and having independence, that you know, the new terminology of free-range parroting
Right.
really works in Chautauqua.
Right. And so the kids, and how long do the kids come to Chautauqua during the summer?
Well, we're going to have the entire family up here for 1 week. We've rented a house in Chautauqua, so a 9-bedroom house, and we'll have the whole gang here.
Right, right,
But normally they only get up here for maybe a week at a time.
right, right. And what are your favorite activities for yourself at Chautauqua? What do you like to do?
I guess I look at Chautauqua as kind of an intellectual kind of rebirth for me every year. So I really like going to lectures. I like discovering what kind of books CLSC presents this year. I really enjoy meeting people in the streets because there's so many fascinating people here from so many different backgrounds. So it's just a really great place to renew your intellectual curiosity.
Right. Any particular lecturers that struck out or hit home this year?
I don't think I've had any real home runs yet, but
Okay.
you know, they've all been really excellent ones.
And
Of course, Roger Rosenblatt's always a wonderful guy to listen to.
Right, very funny. Now, I understand you also do some teaching here at Chautauqua, and I wonder if you could tell me about what courses you've taught.
Well, I have actually only taught one course
Okay.
on NSA. I haven't taught any courses on photography yet.
Okay.
And a friend of mine, Ira Cooperman, who I had taken a couple of courses from and had some conversations about the intelligence community, which he's familiar with, kind of drew me aside and said, "You really ought to teach a course with me." And I had never taught a course anywhere on anything before.
Okay.
And so, you know, I wasn't really sure I would like teaching or I could do it, but I found out I loved it, and people seemed to have responded well to it, and I actually got a great deal out of doing the research to create the course. So it's been a fun time, and I guess a new direction for me. Another thing that Chautauqua offers is new places to discover yourself.
Right. Now, do you have any particular areas you'd like to talk about, or any areas of specialization that are just you're burning to share with others?
Specialization in
teaching,
the sense of
well, areas of what NSA does, such as could be some higher level math, electronics.
Well, one thing I do enjoy is exposing people to the concepts of cryptography, and part of the course that I taught with Ira last year and will repeat again this year in week 5 is teaching people that the core of NSA really begins with cryptography. So I go back to the history of cryptography, back to the 15th century, some of the texts that were actually written that far back, show some people some of the earlier cryptologic devices like cipher wheels and what have you. We do a simple exercise, and then we talk about Enigma, which is probably the best known cipher system that people have heard of, and then talk a little bit about where NSA might go with that in the future.
Right. Now, can you tell us, just give us a refresh memory for those who are not familiar with Enigma, what the story is on that?
Well, Enigma was the main crypto device that the Nazis used in World War II, and there's some great movies about it. There was a recent one, The Imitation Game, that talked about Turing and his involvement in creating that. So it was a what they thought was a very secure system, but which first the Poles and then the Brits and then us Americans discovered was breakable.
Right.
And so there was an immense project. Bletchley Park was part of that. That's in the lore, and there was just a tremendous amount of people involved in that process.
Right.
It made a difference in World War II.
Right. Right. And also out of that grew some good security procedures and rules about utilizing those intercepts, did it not?
Well, and one of the things we discovered was how poor security procedures on the German side actually helped us break into that system. So I think it made us more sensitive to what are good security procedures.
Right. I think there was a sort of a common, I'm thinking back to Cumberbatch in the film Imitation Game, common thing that they sent out a weather forecast, and people, the smart folks, realized that could provide the keys to break the code that was in use at the time.
And that was pretty accurate. That was
transmission.
the way it happened.
Now, last summer I shot a video at Bletchley of both the Enigma machine and the bomb. And I think I need to unearth those and let you guys have a copy of them. They're not the best, but they are thoroughly viewable. And there was a gentleman there who looked, both of those guys talking, looked like they had been involved in those systems when they were operational. So these guys were old, but they were still full of fire and immensely fun to ask tough questions to.
I think they actually recreated some of those machines.
Yeah.
And I might mention that NSA and the NSA Museum actually has versions of the Enigma machine and the Bombay machine that was used to break the system. So people don't have to go to England to see
that. I think the bomb, what we saw was a reproduction in, somebody mentioned that, but they said that the Enigma machine was authentic. And you can fuss with it, what model it was, how many wheels it has, and the like, but those were good to go. Now let's carry this along a little more interesting and more up to date. You have a very solid technical background. You had a career at NSA doing organizational relations. You tell me that was sort of where it drifted to. And you've become a photographer. Where did you learn your photographic skills?
From my father.
You did?
So he was an accomplished photographer, won many awards in the, I guess it was the 50s. He died young when he was 55, and I was barely out of college at the time. But I remember as a child, he used to take me into his darkroom and I could help him dip the prints through the various chemicals and what have you. And I think at age 12, he actually bought me a camera and I started shooting for myself.
Right.
So I've shot images my whole life, but I learned that it was an entirely different matter when you chose to become a professional.
Right, right. What were some of the early cameras? I'm just curious, you remember what those were?
Well, my first one was what they called a graphics 35. They
Okay.
were mostly 35 millimeter cameras
Right.
because that was pretty much the affordable film that you could use those
Right.
days. So that was the first camera. I think when I joined NSA, I had the opportunity to travel to Hong Kong early in my career, and that was at the time the center where you could buy cheap camera equipment, and I bought myself a Minolta.
Right.
So that was kind of my first powerful
Right.
film camera that I used.
And so you spent time in the chemical darkroom and worked through that whole regime.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It almost took me to a career in chemical engineering.
Really?
So I was
Really?
so fascinated with chemical processes that I spent a lot of time in my high school years looking at chemistry. I got an opportunity to go to some honors classes at a local college as a result, but somewhere along the line when I was in college, I kind of reoriented myself toward electrical
Toward
engineering.
electrical stuff. And so and you probably played the game of taking old pennies and dipping them in the fixer that was spent, and then you had these silver-coated pennies and passed them around like something special.
No,
You
I
never
never
do
thought
that?
of that one.
Boy, that was one of the oldest tricks going. We better get back in that
Yeah,
darkroom.
okay,
and
well,
get a
I'll have to
gallon,
try that one
a gallon of
with my
spent
grandkids.
a gallon of spent fixture, and you give those grandkids silver-coated pennies. Like, Grandpa, how did you do that? you can make a lot of miles on that one. That old trick.
It's magic, huh?
Yeah. Okay. Now, so you learned the skills from your dad. Sort of in and out of photography for a while. Electronics was competition. Go ahead.
May I insert another item? During my NSA career, I got involved with at the time, highly classified National Reconnaissance Organization, the
Right.
NRO. And of course, one of the things that they did was launch the satellites that photographed
Right.
images. And very early on, I began to see the potential of digital photography as a commercial venture. So I was kind of ahead of the game saying, this is going to happen, and someday I'm going to have a digital camera.
And it happened.
Yeah.
Absolutely happened. And so that worked out. Now, I wonder if you could show us some of your photographs and let us talk about them. And I understand one that has to do with your wife.
Sure.
And if they can, Chuck will bring them up momentarily here.
Okay.
So what we have here?
Okay. So this is a coaching product
Okay.
that my wife and two of her colleagues created. And basically, it's a box of 72 images. I think if you flip to the next screen, you'll see
Okay.
an example image. And basically, it's an image that invites some kind of reaction, a response.
Right.
And what a coach will do with this is offer these to a client and attempt to begin a conversation. And I've seen my wife use these actually in the United States and in South America with clients.
Right.
And it's magic how it creates conversation within a group when you do
Okay.
that.
Does this resemble anything in the world of psychology?
Well, you know, when she first suggested it, I said, is this going to be kind of a Rorschach test product? And to some degree, I think it is, but it's amazing the creative comments you get on an image like that one you saw there. And they are all, by the way, so entirely different from what drew me to taking that picture. So
Right.
that's been kind of the magic for me to expand my appreciation of what I see in
Right.
a potential image.
How many pictures did you take to get that picture of a little girl who looks just so perfect? Can we see that again, Chuck? That little girl? There we go.
I'm kind of an Ansel Adams kind of a guy, and he always said when people ask him about his, like, moon over Hernandez, how many pictures did you take to get that? And he said one. So basically, I see the image and I grab it.
Got it.
You know, some of them are set up, but I just take one image.
Right. And you go from there.
Yeah.
That sounds like somebody in the old chemical photo days. Film was
Ansel Adams?
expensive. Yeah, film was expensive, and so we're taking one and we're doing it right.
That might be part of it. You're right.
You had to learn the discipline to do it right. Okay. Let's see what else you've given us to take a look at here. Tell us the story behind it.
Okay.
Now you can't fool me. Those palm trees are fake.
Really. I guess I kind of have an evil sense of humor.
Okay.
And I enjoy creative comments. I often make greeting cards for my kids for their birthdays and things like that. And that's one of the services I offer. I suggest to people that I can create a greeting or a note card that will be unique, that your people will enjoy. And in this case, that's Washington, D.C., when we had a 3-foot snow, what, 3 or 4 years ago. And,
okay.
And we were really up to here
okay.
with snow, so it was basically, we're done with this already. So I thought, you know, we'll throw up the dead snowman and the palm trees and go with it.
Is that you and your wife out there?
That is, yeah.
That is. So you got a appropriate picture for the two of you for
right.
some good laughs in the future. Okay. What else do we have here?
All right. This is taken at Gettysburg Battlefield, and basically I've had some calendar clients who want patriotic themes.
Okay.
VFW, organizations like that. So being a resident of nearby Washington, D.C., there's just a wonderful opportunity to shoot patriotic subjects in D.C., and Gettysburg isn't that far away, and I knew that they wanted a shot of Gettysburg, so I went up there and spent an entire day shooting, and that's one I sold.
Now you do that with digital?
I do.
Okay.
That was I shoot totally digital now.
Okay, and let's take a little diversion here. How has the change? We'll talk about this and leave that on because it's a great photo. But how has the change from the film-based to the digital affected your photography?
Well, I think it's allowed me to be much more creative.
Okay.
First of all, digital photography has a much wider range, both in the way you can capture light, your ability to shoot in low lighting situations, and your ability to shoot a lot.
Okay.
So and also create a lot. So in film, it sometimes would take me an entire evening to print one print.
Right.
Now I can look at a number of images, decide how I want to experiment with those, and print, you know, many in one night.
Right. Now, do you do much work in post with software packages?
With what?
In software packages like Photoshop?
Well, Photoshop, yeah, I'm expert in Photoshop, but there's another companion program called Lightroom,
okay.
which is really the photographer's, and it's very descriptive. Lightroom, like the old screens where you used to set your slides on a backlit screen to
right.
examine which one you wanted to pick.
Right.
Lightroom does the same thing, and it allows you to keyword images and access them very quickly. Within the last, I guess I've been shooting digital since about 2002. I've accumulated more than 100,000 images, and I can get to any one of those images in a couple of minutes.
How do you get to them?
Well, I've keyworded them.
Okay.
But I've found getting old that one of the things I've been able to discover about myself is I'm a very visual guy. I have a great visual memory. I have a lousy memory for people's names, things like that. But I can remember where I've taken every shot. I can usually remember, you know, time of day, time of year, what year it was. So it's a good start there.
So you put some descriptors on them and then call up the descriptors.
That, or I've put them in files that I know where to go for.
Right, right. And that comes out. Now, I wonder if we can go back to that picture of the sleigh ride and tell us about this.
Yeah, it was one cold day that I had been coming up here in the winter. My wife and I like to visit Chautauqua over the New Year's because it's a chance to get together with other friends from Chautauqua and also experience what Chautauqua is like in the winter.
Right.
And for many years I had seen these gentlemen with their horses pulling a wagon around because it hadn't quite gotten snowy enough to have a sleigh. So I knew they had a sleigh this day, and I went out, and it was well below freezing at that point. And they take tours around the grounds, and I think the tour takes like maybe 20 minutes.
Right.
And I set myself up And I probably had to wait for about 4 passes before I got exactly what I wanted. So it was a cold day.
It's a cold day. But it was worth it, huh?
It was. I love that shot.
Yeah. And how many pictures do you think you took that day on digital?
Again, I probably didn't take too many. Like that particular position, I took 1 or 2, but I walked around the grounds and took some other shots because Chautauqua was so beautiful in the winter.
Right.
There's many things to discover.
Right. I know I've gone out and done some projects in digital. Did a wedding not too long ago, ended up with 1,200 photographs afterward. I thought to myself, if this thing was ever done in film days, I'd have to take out another mortgage just to pay for all the materials. And in digital, it's not a big deal. Have you ever lost a hard drive and lost pictures?
I've lost a hard drive, but I'm security conscious, right? So I typically have at least 3 copies.
3 copies.
I have 2 sets of disk drives and other ways to back it up. So I've never lost a picture.
That's terrific. And you've been doing it digitally for how long?
Since 2002.
So 13 years. That's got to be a record for 13 years of digital photographs. That many, and you've been adequately covered with production copies.
Well, yeah, without losing them, that's true.
That's good.
But by the way, I still have all the negatives from all my film shoots, too.
Ooh.
So
You're good. You're good. Have you scanned the negatives?
As I choose to. So
Okay.
scanning is very cumbersome, especially if you want a high-quality print. So, I've scanned maybe 1% of what I've had.
Right. Do you have any more photographs here?
Don't know.
Oh, look at this.
Okay. All right. I guess I'd put this in my fine art category. Basically, I like to be out of doors. I like to hike. This particular shot was taken in Cataract Canyon on the Colorado River. My wife and I did a float trip. And, everybody can shoot cliffs and scenic pictures of the Grand Canyon and what have you. So I was trying to capture something different here. Mm-hmm. And basically what you see is the raging Colorado in a rainstorm. So the flares on that are actually raindrops on my my camera lens.
Got it. Got it.
And I also tried to capture that guy standing on the rocks in the background.
Uh-huh. And did you use a release for that, or just take the picture? Or just take it and that's it?
No, I stood there to take it. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. The Colorado on a raft is pretty hard to set up a tripod.
You bet. You bet. Okay. Do we have any more? And what's happening here with this one, with the funny tones?
One of my hobbies is being a car guy.
Okay.
So I'm interested in all things cars. I actually raced cars at one point. I've rebuilt cars. I've painted cars. I've collected cars. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I photograph cars. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in classic cars with their graceful shapes, and I'm also interested in, I guess, what I'd call junk cars, and that was a junk car, because I think they just create an aura that's very interesting.
And what's the process by which you got that collection of tones?
Well, that's something you can do in Photoshop to make some adjustments to. First off, I shot it in color, but I changed it to what they call a duotone image.
Right. And that worked out fine then. Now, do you have any major photographic projects planned?
Well, that's a good question. I've been so busy with grandchildren and teaching. I think I've traditionally displayed prints in the member gallery at Chautauqua.
Right.
And the last couple of years I've missed that because of my teaching activities.
Right.
But I think what I'm going to do is try to combine my photographic interests with my teaching interests. And next year, it happens that my wife and I are going to take a trip through the Panama Canal this fall.
Wonderful.
And what I plan to do is shoot some pictures, and I've been doing a lot of reading already about Panama Canal, and the things that fascinate me about that are the history involved in it, and also the engineering feats that were accomplished when they built that. So I want to try to weave that into some kind of Chautauqua course.
Right, right. So
which will also include my photography.
That would be great, and Panama and your photography. And we are out of time. And it's been great fun talking with you, Chaz. Do come back. This is John V. thanking you for viewing this episode of Chautauqua People.